Computer. Hello, everyone. I am here with Misael Bey. This man has been described to me as the Mark Allen Smith of Sumerian magic, which, according to most, is a very high compliment. How are you doing
Thank
tonight?
you. I'm good, brother. Thanks. Thanks for having me on the show. Uh, I really appreciate it. I think this is like the second time I've been interviewed by an occultist. So it's a real honor, and I always enjoy your work and what you're doing. So this is tremendous, man. It seems like things are really moving forward.
Yeah, definitely. So you run a blog called WordPress, not called WordPress. You don't want run word. You don't run WordPress. You run Warlock's Asylum. So I've seen you write about politics, porn, uh, and also the occult very heavily, mainly the
hmm
Necronomicon.
hmm
So,
Exactly. Yeah, that was originally was Papers in the Attic, and I changed it because I want to go. The whole idea, when I got into the Necronomicon studies was to, I wanted to be on something that was grown man stuff. I didn't want to be in something look at it looks like, people have 1,000 pins in their face. Like there's nothing wrong with that, but I didn't want to. I wanted to have like a more textured feel so it could appeal to wide audiences. The page started at the time, there was very little information about the Simon Necronomicon available online. I mean, I think I've seen books describe one section selling for $50, $60, and there wasn't like a lot of material in the books. So it
mhm.
wasn't too many people that didn't really understand the tome and stuff like that. And I had to work with the Necronomicon itself from the late 90s, as far as the 50 names. And then I kept trying to go into the energies to learn how to gate walk. And finally, I met a brother who really knew a lot about, the text and took me through gate walking. And once that happened, I decided to journal my experiences so other people can benefit, or if they find any benefit in it, you know, it's there as a reference, and it's also for me, it was my journal. So I could always look back and be like, well, where did I discover this at, and, check my own, material, so
Yeah.
that's kind of like how the page got started.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So why is it that the Necronomicon by Simon is such a huge focal point for you in your writing?
Uh, well, I mean, to me, it's personally the only thing that I meshed with. You know what I'm saying? It
Mm.
seemed like it was like hand in glove. And then the more I began to discover about the tone and just my personal reflection, like I'm a rising Aquarius, which is inky sign. My sun is in Libra, which is a Venusian sign, and my subconscious moon sign is in Aries, which is like Nagao. So to me, that was just like a perfect fit. You know what I'm saying? So um, and it was something I had always explored with Sumerian mythology. You hear that the Sumerians, they were the first to do this and the first to do that sort of thing. I think more or less in the area of civilization. You know what I'm saying? A lot of times when people are looking for civilization, they may not realize that that was not man's first society. Man had a whole era of hunting gathering culture. I mean, that stretches back to times memorial, long before civilization began. But for civilization purposes, yes, Sumeria set up something that set the precedent, for everything else to be followed. So when I got heavily involved in it, it was like, man, this is amazing. You know what I'm saying? And the energy now, going through Nizu and other forms of alchemy and things of that nature, I could look at it more objectively than being possessed by it, like in that sense. Well, however, what I would say is that the Necronomicon itself is like a born again Pentecostal Christian. It's like that type of energy. So when it really hits into you, you want to write about it, you want to talk about it, it's like that sort of thing. And I mean, that's the kind of feel I got from it. But as far as like in the beginning, I had a lot of different perceptions, you know what I'm saying, when I first started the Simon tone than I do today. You know what I'm saying? So at that time, I'd be, to keep it straight, I wanted to kind of, my perception of like the craft and everything was like, hey man, these people getting tromped on and they're just trying to make the world a better place or whatever. Then I realize now, like, there is a difference between, they can merge together, but a lot of times there's a difference between spirituality and just straight magic, so how people interpret those things determines their pathway. And then, for me, myself, I had to uncover a lot. I know it's like a lot of people with drawn to the neck are trying to release themselves from curse, like in their mind and things of that nature. So that was my situation also. A lot of times I would go to people and I mean, they would be charging astronomical amounts of money. And I was in a situation that was like, look, if I had this type of ends, I wouldn't need to even be coming to you. You know what I'm saying? But because I feel my spirit is trapped in something, this is what it is. So I promised I would learn a system and share with others to kind of beat the hypocrisy out into the world. You know what I'm saying? Later, I found out that I think it's one of the videos that you had did recently. Like a lot of these people, they're just trying to get, a lot of people are sincere in their own way, and some of them are just, trying to use people to do whatever. You know what I'm saying? But
Yeah.
it was a lot of changes. I mean, those years were like the bulk of that, I call it the golden era. Like from 2007 to 2011 was ridiculous. You know what I'm saying? As far as like a lot of the things we were learning and just the strides we were making, and it was just like real innocent movement. Because we wasn't aware of like a lot of other stuff that was going on. You know what I mean? So it was a little bit crazy. Yeah.
It's really interesting that. Do you know the guy from Magicology?
I know a couple of names out of there. You know what I mean? Like I haven't, like right now, I'm just kind of doing some side work. I'm not on the net as much, but
Okay.
I've heard, the paradigm and everything. So yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah.
For some reason I could have sworn you knew that YouTuber, but he has a whole YouTube channel dedicated to the Necronomicon
Ah, yes,
almost
yes,
entirely.
yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. I've come across past. We've spoken several
Okay,
times. Yeah, he's a good brother. You know what I'm saying? He's like kind of sincere, in what he's doing, and
definitely.
he's definitely putting a lot of work out there. You know what I'm saying? I can see that the spirit has captured him. So
Definitely.
he's doing a lot on that end, which is great. You know what I'm saying? Which is good. Yeah, it's really, really, really good. I enjoy watching his videos, and they've discovered some things that are really amazing. About the seals and the sigils and stuff like that. And I think it's all good, what I'm saying, because that's a powerful piece of work. And, there's reasons why it's controversial, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That I can get in a little bit, you know what I mean?
Yeah. What really speaks to me, I think an outsider to the Necronomicon's magic
Mm-hmm.
should find it pretty significant that there are people like Magicology, like Ari Monasul,
Mm-hmm.
and like you, who primarily dedicate their public occult literature to this one particular book.
Mm-hmm.
I think that says a lot about the book because I don't really see that with any other grimoires out there.
No, no, the Simon tome is a path. It's a pathway. That's the best way to describe it. And it's a book that was directly inherited from the Jinn. You know what I'm saying? Um, it is what it is. Like what Simon talks about in Gates is only part of the story. I might as well go into it because when you hear the full story, you really understand what's going on. But basically, everyone knows pretty much who's around the occult, knows about the occult wars between Kenneth Grant's group and the Caliphate OTO at one time when he split off because, he didn't want to dilemma to keep on this Victorian symbolism of the woman. He wanted to go more into like a little bit more primal current, a little bit into Hinduism, to Voodoo and stuff like that. They got into a big war. During that time, um, someone had discovered, I think they ripped the museum off, a Sumerian grimoire. It had nothing to do with Lovecraft. You know what I'm saying? Nothing to do with Lovecraft and all that kind of stuff. I mean, that was inserted later. But anyway, there was a couple of meetings, um, and they were about to set this thing off. You know what I'm saying? They had people to make the tools and stuff like that or whatever. Unfortunately, in groups like that, there are always people who ride both sides. So you have some people who were in Typhonian at that time who were also part of Caliphate OTO, and they blew the whistle. So a lot of people got deported. A lot because you're dealing with, if you have a $1 million item that's been heisted, that's like grand larceny. Okay,
Yeah.
so a lot of people got deported and stuff, and and then after that happened, because this never really hit the newspapers or nothing, but because of that happened, the satanic panic came after that. You see what I'm saying? Because now, if this is what these dudes are doing, let's investigate the whole occult, because the occult, it wasn't just about magic. It was about it was a dark web. You know what I'm saying? So anything you can get, witches really held it. Like, you need guns, let's go see a witch. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what it was. You know what I'm saying? So it was like grimoires that wasn't out to the public. A lot of them were bought by judges and people high in grade. You know what I'm saying? Like, even beyond the Masonic circles. So something like that would have been very valuable, and they could have split the pie a lot of different ways. So after that, my personal opinion is I think Slater was probably around that temperature. So if you look at Kenneth Grant, we know Kenneth Grant was like the main force behind it, because he believes that AWAS is individually above everybody, where some Thelemites believe that AWAS was just a direct energy that Crowley, that sort of thing, talked to individually. So to make a long story short, Kenneth Grant was always like, discover yourself, be the person you could be. Like, if anyone ever applied for the Typhonian OTO, you make your own exercise and you have to journal it for 9 months and things of that nature. So the Necronomicon, to be able to go into the gate, is very much his signature. And then there's things in the text that at that time, like this is 1977, like, in order for you to get information at that time, you had to write to a library, you had to know exactly what you were writing for, and you had to tell them the page numbers, and then they can send you a copy. So
Fuck
there's
that.
yeah, so there's no way that this stuff could have been something that was invented by a 20-year-old named Lavenda. You understand what I'm saying? So what happened was, because people saw the original context, this is what something people don't understand. If you want to get something out there, you get it out through fiction, because it keeps the feds at bay, because they're thinking like, oh, this is a fictional text and sort of thing. So they submerged it with Lovecraft, because a lot of the themes that Lovecraft had kind of coincide with, if you knew the mythos, it kind of coincides. I never really read any Lovecraft stories. I may have read like one or two. You know what I'm saying? I wasn't really attracted to the Necronomicon. Doesn't even preach that. But here's the thing I have to say to people who say, oh, the book is not real. That's not even the point. Like you said, I think in one of your videos, people who work with the Simon Tome don't believe in Lovecraft stuff. You know what I'm saying? Now you have this whole cult of people saying, oh, that's not real. That's not real. It's a hoax. Here's something to think about. Science, like what do you call it? Academic science has used over 100 terms that come out of fictional books, but you don't have a line of people saying, "Oh, that's not real because it came out of a fictional book." Occultism is science, so it follows the same procedure. You see what I'm saying? And the procedure that the Simon Tome has taken as a grimoire. It's the same procedure that other grimoires have taken. The Keys of Solomon was a legend up until the text actually came out. You see what I'm saying? And no one's saying, hey, that's not the real Keys of Solomon because what? Like, it's just people. This is why the hate has gone on. Now that we know that the Caliphate OTO had perpetrated like this, how can you say this mashup where these efforts were halted. Now they're going to make it where none of this could be respected in any occult school, because most of the occult schools that we know have been infiltrated by high-ranking Thelemites, at least during the times of, like, I would say from the late 70s to like the end of the Obama era. After that, it just became a free fall. But like during this time period, like, so you will find all of a sudden Dan Harm pops up, who he's also part of one of those organizations. I'm not really going to blow a spot up or whatever. So he's given a test. Hey, why don't you do this as an assignment? Now, here's a college kid. Now, his books, like, I've printed books. I think you've written a couple of books yourself. I don't think a person who's in college writes a book and then the book is in every occult school saying that the Necronomicon is not real, which is what he did with the Necronomicon files. So this is something that was coordinated. You understand what I'm saying? You know, when you think about it, like, how did this book land on COS's front page? So when we came out talking about the Necronomicon, it was a little bit risk. We didn't think of it at the time because all these organizations had denounced the book. Now you come in showing evidence that the book is really what it is. You know, these other dudes is like, man, you know what, maybe we shouldn't have put that on our website or something like that. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So, you know, not to bash, you know, their opinion or whatever. So a lot of times what I would do is interview people from different schools of thought, which is a lot of the occult interviews you see, because we didn't want to really deal with all this drama. But I could see ahead of time, like, you know what, let me make a platform, you know, to show these people, like, hey, man, we respect what you're doing. We're just trying to find a way with what we're doing with this. You see what I'm saying? And that's how that came about. But as far as like someone creating a book, that's impossible. Like, you look at the term Bandar. Bandar is only found in a what do you call those? Like a magazine. It's not a magazine, but like a journal. You know, one of those journal magazines, like the Royal Asiatic Society, like something like that, from the year 1801. How could you find something like? And it's only one page. You know what I'm saying? It describes that the Bandar is a rite that comes from the Sinhalese Buddhist. You're saying they use the term called Bandar. It's a Bandar cult, and it's a little bit more different than what we see in the Simon Necronomicon. However, the Bandar is summoned from a martial deity who's represented and backed by three major gods in the Buddhist, in that form of Buddhism. And then from that, the Bandar is much like a jinn, you know, like a small genie. So a person would negotiate its terms, what it expects, and things of that nature. And it goes into the occult of dead kings protecting those who invoke them, which is where the Jesus Christ technology comes into play. That's directly also inherited from Chaldea, where people invoke dead kings to protect them. And so so Christ is not just one individual, it's numerous kings who are deceased, but it comes under the umbrella of that one term. I'm not a Christ too, but I'm just throwing that out there to clarify. Maybe some people are, you know.
So one curious thing about the Necronomicon is that it ends with the writer saying that he's being destroyed by the spirits and is very confused about why/how this is happening. And in even the modern occult age, we do see even really, really great occult authors come to that type of fate. Like, you'll read like some of the best grimoires you've ever read, and then a motherfucker's being destroyed. Like, I've seen this with multiple people. Do you have any theories about what happened to the author of the Necronomicon at the end?
Yeah, he just moved on. That's all. He got out of the underworld and he began living life as usual. And we know that because at the end of the text, like you said, that's one of the mysteries. One thing about the Necronomicon, I'm going to say this since it's on my mind, is that it could be read backwards and be understood as well as it could be read forwards. Okay, so the dark water stirring is what it says in the last chapter. Now, if you go to the Megon text, before Ishtar was resurrected, it said the dark water stirred. So that means that a person is leaving the underworld. Now, here's the thing. the underworld in Sumerian mythology, the Sumerians were actually the first to lay out magic historically, where we can find historical artifacts of people doing magic, witchcraft even. And so a lot of what we read in Sumeria, it tells us a lot of what magic is and its purpose, right? So in the case of the occult, a lot of times what people are tapping into is another world, and nothing grows in another world. You see what I'm saying? So that's another reason why I like the Necronomicon, because you had a balance between the starry world and the land of the dead. And you also had another land that talks about the land of the Agigi. So nothing grows in the underworld. So it's a place where you obtain the waters of life and you escape and you get out of it. You know what I'm saying? And then, certain things go on because Sumer, Egypt, even some of Mesoamerica, they were all death cults. They dealt with death energy. And there's nothing wrong with death energy. I think Christianity, Islam, and Judaism also deal, not Judaism so much, but Islam and Christianity definitely deal with death energy. Christianity extremely because of symbolism. You know what I'm saying? So the idea was to be able to, when you go through the gates, like in the prescribed manner it mentions in the book, let me just say this, and you leave the gates, when you finish the walking, on the emotional level, you realize that everything that you've done before walking the gates has been dismissed. Like you have a fresh, clean slate. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And your sins are forgiven. And now you can take your course. A lot of times, magicians would choose to stay in the underworld because they like the graveyard, aesthetics and things of that nature. You know what I'm saying? It's nothing wrong with that. However, I would say this. What brought a lot of balance into my life and how I approach these things is you always measure it with science. So, for example, smiling is good for your health, right? Scientists have confirmed this. You know what I'm saying? So you want to work with things that keep you in that type of state that make your life happy. A lot of times people get too much into the aesthetics, and that's not what the trip is about. If you read the Mad Arab, he was a pretty righteous dude. You know what I'm saying? Like he was like, man, why would somebody want to worship the ancient ones? Like he says a lot of different stuff, but really he's a guy, and how the book works. Even in his testimony, the first testimony is actually a metaphoric look at what's going on in the book and how the rituals are done and things of that nature. You know what I'm saying? So I think for me personally, what I've noticed is that people who work with the text have done the walking and move on, they've had a pretty good deal. You know what I'm saying? People who stay with the walking, that's not really cool. But people who practice ceremonially after walking, that's good. Because walking is just performing Hajj. That's like telling someone to continue performing Hajj to be a Muslim. I mean, I may have threw that out there when we was first learning how to walk the gates. You know what I'm saying? So now you have people saying that they're traditionalists and they only deal with the 7 gates. That's an initiation. That's not the work of the Necronomicon. The seal of the gate is what you use to call that energy after you walk it in the ceremonies of calling. It's not to keep walking. Hey, I want to get in tune with this energy. I'm going to walk it. And then it tells you in the text not to walk the gates out of order. So if you're walking the gates, walk them once. If you're going to keep walk them in the order that they're given, not walk them, hey, I want to go to Jupiter this month. That's not what the text describes. And here's something that I don't like. I'm going to tell you about what kind of makes this a little bit of a spoiled pot is that if you want to know what's real with the Necronomicon, all you have to do is just check the mythology of the ancient Mesopotamians. The mythology of any pantheon tells you how the energy works. So if you see something like your person calls a deity and it's not in accord with how the energy is described in its mythology, you're dealing with a trickster deity. Now, a lot of people's egos come into play. So a lot of times they, oh, that's your opinion. That's what the mythologies say. You see what I'm saying? And then next, couple of months they're all backed up or something like that. Deal with things as they are. Everyone's trying to learn, their process and cultivate themselves. I grew up where there's no big I's or little U's. You know what I'm saying? That's how I tried to make it a place where everyone could break bread and eat together as a family, and everything that's going on. But I do know that if you're dealing with something, I don't care if it's a Necronomicon or what other book or whatever, but the Dingir are like as serious as dealing with the Loa or the Orishas or something, because these were energies that were petitioned in temples at one time historically, and they were given sacrifice as far as animals and things of that nature. So it was not something that, like a person playing with or whatever, because they got a Western style of petitioning it. So a person wants to make sure that they're familiar enough to know the energy, and then when they are walking the gate, that energy unlocks within them. You see what I'm saying? And so they can recognize it. So when I had students, all of them knew who Ishtar was on an energetic level, even though the experiences were slightly different. They knew it like we all know a person in common. You see what I'm saying? And so, and it was great. So, but a lot of times I would come across people that I really didn't know, you know what I'm saying? And they would talk about something, and I'll just be sitting there like, I don't know if that's really, whatever. And you try to go into it with them and they're thinking like, oh man, that's just no, it's not. It's just what the mythology said. You know what I'm saying? So it's like that sort of thing. I mean, I'm not an expert, but I pretty much, it's like Ishtar takes her own for her own. Once married to her, no man can have another bride. Like when you really work with that thing, it's like having a wife. You know what I'm saying? So you kind of know like, oh man, this thing, man, I need to get back into this, like that sort of thing. Or, it's always something with that, you know what I mean? But looking back upon it, there was a lot of really good things to happen, and it was really bright. But fortunately, those energies, as we work with them, they were very compassionate. So a lot of times if you made, an error or you saw something like, nah, I don't know if that's really cool or not, you could feel it. And then later on, you go back and you do it over like, magicians do or whatever. And that was that sort of thing.
So I was wanting to talk with you about the Ancient Ones, this pantheon consisting of Tiamat and Cthulhu and
Mm-hmm.
entities under them and, aligned with them and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So my experiences with those beings, as well as with the, Sumerian gods, Marduk, Ishtar, etc., have been pretty much universally fantastic.
Mm.
And you do a great job on your website of like covering these beings in depth, especially the same ones that Lovecraft wrote about. Why do you feel that they are vilified the way that they are in the Necronomicon?
I think it's a warning, you know what I'm saying? A warning, so that people who may not have a strong enough mind may not tamper into something that's harmful. And that's kind of, in some ways, that's how I got into the occult. Because if you're going to hide something, you're going to put it in an aesthetic that not too many people want to bother with. That was my thinking when I first was going into occult science. So I think, like, I remember going into those spaces, man, like, wow, Pazuzu and, like walking those things. And it was just like, man, it was the same thing. I have different students, they would walk and they would have the same experiences. They didn't know each other. And they would tell me, the same sort of feedback or whatever. So we knew like, man, this stuff is pretty real or whatever. But I think that as far as like what people encounter in those worlds, I would say this, like when I was working with those energies, I understood why religion takes the stand that it does, like in the old days, because certain things are associated with the underworld that you really wouldn't know unless you ventured there, and you will see the reflection in your own experience. You understand what I'm saying? So like I kind of get, what was kind of going on with that. And those forces are very real. They're very powerful. The next, sometimes you could do something and you may not be able to see it until a couple of months later, a couple of years later. Like you can feel the sensation because the language opens up, something that's kind of going to get your mind a little lucid. But when you're really looking at the work itself, it could take some time for things to come into fruition, or even the backlash. And that's not a negative thing, but just, really fully understanding the whole thing in itself. The Necronomicon, it speaks double language. You know what I'm saying? Because on one end, it will say something, I guess, to keep the wary away. And then the next thing, it's saying something, like, for example, in the introduction, it says, some dare to summon the forces of the ancient ones, whatever. Like, here's the thing that I've learned. The whole book is a book of the ancient ones. Everything from Ishtar to Enki, because when he first opens the text, he says there's a race of ancient gods, demons, and whatever. So that means the whole thing is ancient ones. However, in terms of study, it's separated so that a person can get a feel from one energy to the next. But the whole thing is the ancient ones because they reflect the time when the jinn ruled mankind. You know what I'm saying? And like in Middle Eastern lore, the jinn are considered to have lived before Adam by so many thousands of years. So those are all the ancient ones, you know what I'm saying? I think the dichotomy of how the book is separated and everything, it serves a good way to work to understand the 7 and 9. Like, I think there's something, I think you had a post recently by Ayak Sakak.
Yeah.
And if I remember, either Ayak Sakak or Ishniggurath, but there was a mention in one of Lovecraft's stories about, even I'm referencing Lovecraft, we don't work with him, but about 7 and 9 coming down the stairs. And that's universal in every pantheon. 9 in the graveyard and 7 planetary deities. You know what I'm saying? So that's the work of the ancient ones. And that was the work of the whole ancient world at the time. And it relied on death energy. So anyone who could wield death energy was a god because they can destroy or preserve. You see what I'm saying? Even the gods that you worship now, I don't care what pantheon it is. Anytime you look in heaven, all them deities got swords in their hands because, they're about to wield something. You know what I'm saying? So it took me a long time actually to really accept, really let that sink in, what it really means. And, because once you experience those things, whatever you go into after that, what you find is that people are not aware. But when you juggle in a primal force, and I've seen people leave this world on the strength of occult technology. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've seen people, I didn't, really, but I've seen things happen. Let me just say it like that. And once you see those things happen, and then you go into something else just to have a little light vacation, you find people really don't know. You know what I'm saying? Even like priests, whatever, they just don't know. I mean, that thing, the man of the underworld, was what Cthulhu means. That's something that is something that is amazing because the attunement that it provides for the practitioner and the union with the world of nature and the stars is phenomenal. You know what I'm saying? So, that's the good thing about that. Sometimes I would say a practitioner they have to take the balance. They have to feed themselves a certain aesthetics of what's brighter and a certain aesthetics of what is darker. And through that, they can conquer not being enchanted by either aesthetics. You see what I'm saying? But use them at their disposal. It takes a while before a person is able to break out of the hypnotism that they put themselves under.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? In order to be able to work with the system. When I had, because I think one of the brothers had asked me, like, man, you had stopped writing on the blog page about the neck a lot. And a lot of it, first, there was a lot of information anyway. There was so much information because I was, man, as soon as I get home, I'll be like, da 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 da, da whatever, you know, writing a post, something be going on in my head while I'm at work. And, you know, can't wait to knock this out or whatever. Sometimes I would even write about it at work. But in breaking away, and not even in a way that's volatile or disrespectful, it allows you to observe those things objectively, you know, and kind of see what's in your mind, I remember I used to go to this occult store in New York. It's a famous occult shop too, Enchantments. And one of the guys there said that he had stopped practicing occult to study psychology for 2 years, and talked about how a person studies psychology so they can find out what is actually them and what is exactly not them. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes when you have that break, you can kind of see where you may err with the deities at, you know, just by certain assumptions. Like if I haven't taught the neck in a long time at this moment, but if I was to teach, which we'll probably go into shortly, it would be a whole different dynamic because I'm much more aware after even resisting points of wanting to work with the system. You see what I'm saying? And so that's also another game. So when you mentioned earlier, you know, about the mad Arab leaving, it's a cycle. Because when he begins the book, you can tell he's not practicing it. When he's writing the first testimony, then when he's going through the book, you can feel like, okay, this guy is with me. And then when he comes out, he's not practicing again. You see what I'm saying? You know, not in the sense of what we think. There is one thing I would say is that although I try to build a fuller system around the neck with Nzul, like having the Asian and the Mesopotamian aspects whole. What I would say is that the neck in itself is actually complete when you really, really understand it. You know what I'm saying? It's just, you know, I mean, Reiki is complete, right? Supposedly, Reiki is complete, and it's only got 4 symbols. Now you got 7 gates, 50 names, you know, all this sort of stuff, and it's not complete. You understand what I'm saying? It's just understanding what it is and its use. You know what I'm saying? And then being able to make a way with that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I toss out 1 or 2 examples. A lot of people, you know, when they're walking and rewalking the gates, and I said you don't have to do that. In Judaism, there's something called the Amidah prayer, you know, the prayer that they do. And there's another prayer that's done to show dedication to the state of Israel. In the Necronomicon, there's a prayer that shows one's dedication to the 7 gates. And that's the prayer that begins the second testimony of the Mad Arab, where it says each gate deity to rise. I think it's bright shining sun, oh shining sun, something of that nature. That's a declaration to show one's allegiance to the 7 gates. That's said every day. You know what I'm saying? There's little things I could pick out. You know, when a person's not doing ceremony, they could be doing the Ia Adun I. You know what I'm saying? And that's the way they can invoke. They can send the 50 names at great distances. Each name could be sent at a distance to help a friend out or to retrieve. There's a lot of different things, but as it says in the beginning of the text, a person should have a little bit of a background in magic and mysticism before going through it, and then they can see some of these uses. But if they're just coming in on it, it's not that they're going to make a lot of mistakes in the technical sense, but more in the sense of understanding, you know.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was all the questions I had. Do you have any closing words?
Yeah, I'd like to say thanks a lot for the interview, and I really appreciate it, man. And what you got going is great. You know what I'm saying? Just keep doing what you're doing, and, you know, let your instinct and, you know, your inner self, true inner self, guide you, and it will definitely be a happy and bountiful journey.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah.
So I
Thanks,
definitely
brother.
recommend his blog to all my viewers, especially ones interested in Lovecraftian magic or the Necronomicon, because when people tell me they think that my work is like scholarly or academic, I'm like, okay, they haven't seen this guy yet.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. I'm gonna have a link onto your site too, where I'm gonna do that actually within this week, where a person could see in the menu and
Mhm.
they can just click on it and they can go directly to your YouTube page. You know what I'm
Oh,
saying? So I think that'd be good because you're bringing something. And what I like about it is it's like it's a thing I've been doing on YouTube called Raw Talk, but it's kind of similar in the sense that it's just straight honest. You know what I'm saying? That's like I was like, wow, man, this dude, he's just laying it down. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it's funny because I met with a brother who had got back from California and he was like, "Yeah, I've been watching VK, and I was like, "Yeah, I know the guy. I talked to him the other day, whatever." So it's definitely, opening up a lot of different doors and giving people a lot of support because, in this world, um, even though cultists don't always be in the same room, but in some ways, all we have is each other. You know what I'm
yeah.
saying? Because you could spark some things that I may not know, and another brother can spark some things that I don't know, or I may spark some things that some people don't know, and from that, it's like the hunting gathering culture, nomadic society. From those travels, that's how it gives birth to something great, birth to a new society. You know, so it's a real blessing. I really appreciate it, brother. Thanks a lot, man.
Thanks for coming on. So everyone, make sure you check out the links in the description. So do you have any other websites besides Warlock's Asylum? Do you have any YouTube channels or any social media you would like people to check
Um,
out?
I've been doing the YouTube. People can find me in the Warlock Asylum. I have the Art of Nzuwu blog page. The website should be up soon, and that's going to include some detailed information that's not been known yet about the Necronomicon.
Hell yeah.
And that's basically about it. You know what I'm saying? I think from the blog page, everyone can find out like a lot of different channels that I'm at. So yeah, I appreciate it, brother. You know what I mean? This is tremendous. It's even been a learning as far as the technology is concerned with Zoom.
There were struggles off camera.
Yeah. So, but I got to have you on, as well one day, so we can sit down and talk. We just did the interview, which I appreciate. I got like a lot of views, and one good thing about that is that a lot of times on the blog page people do reference check the interview. So a lot of times in other discussions, like on Reddit or something like that, people tap into that, because it's written, you know what I'm saying? So it's a different type of format, But I definitely want to do more video, you know what I'm saying? Just because sometimes, man, now my life has changed too with family and stuff like that. So sometimes to sit down and write something, it's like I got to really get the time, and you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? But I think coming up in the summer, there's definitely going to be a lot of stuff coming out about the neck, and there's a lot of different surprises. You know what I'm saying? So I think that will be announced shortly, but we'll be getting back to the intensity of the old page soon. You know?
Okay. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. So, but I do appreciate it, man, and just I like to thank everybody out there, who supported the page over the years, and definitely encourage my readers to come and check out your work as well.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. That's all we have for now. So have a great night and
Yeah.
enjoy your immortality.